Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked the giant ovens in the kitchen of the Stellar Majesty. The cruise ship was huge, bigger than most cities back on Earth. It carried over 10,000 passengers from dozens of different alien races across the galaxy. Jake had been working as head chef for 3 years now, and he loved his job. The kitchen was busy as always. Jake's team moved around him like a well-trained army. They prepared meals for thousands of hungry passengers every day. The aliens loved human food, especially when Jake mixed Earth spices with ingredients from their home worlds. Tonight's menu included roasted Centaurian grain birds with Earth herbs, and Jake was excited to see how the passengers would react. "Chef Jake, the Valorian delegation wants extra spice on their meat," called out Lisa, one of his sous chefs. She was human too, one of only 50 humans on the entire ship. "Give them what they want," Jake replied, testing the sauce with a small spoon. "But warn them first. Last time Ambassador Kethron couldn't taste anything for a week." The kitchen filled with laughter. Jake had learned that most alien species couldn't handle the same level of spice that humans enjoyed. What seemed mild to him could burn the mouth of a Centaurian for days. But the Valorians were different. They were warriors, proud and strong, and they took Jake's spicy food as a challenge. Captain Zethkar was Valorian too. He was 7 feet tall with blue-gray skin and 4 arms. The captain had hired Jake personally after tasting his cooking on a space station 3 years ago. Zethkar had said that Jake's food reminded him of the war rations from his home world, but much better. Jake moved to the prep station where huge chunks of meat waited for him. His knives were sharp and clean, each one perfect for a different job. He had learned to use these tools during his training on Earth, but working with alien ingredients had made him even better. Some of the creatures they served had tough hides or strange bone structures. Jake had learned to cut through anything. His favorite knife was a 10-inch chef's blade that his grandmother had given him. The steel was old Earth carbon, harder and sharper than most of the fancy tools the other chefs used. Jake could break down a whole Arcturian frost beast in under 20 minutes with that knife. The alien cooks always watched in amazement when he worked. "Attention all passengers and crew," came the captain's voice over the ship's communication system. "We have received a distress signal from a cargo vessel. We will be stopping to offer assistance as required by galactic law. Please remain calm and continue with your normal activities." Jake looked up from his cutting board. Space was dangerous, full of pirates and raiders who attacked merchant ships. But the Stellar Majesty was huge and well-armed. Most pirates wouldn't dare attack a ship this size. Besides, Captain Zethkar was known throughout the galaxy as a skilled warrior. His crew was loyal and well-trained. "Think it's real trouble." "Chef?" asked Pete, the human janitor who had stopped by the kitchen for his evening coffee. "Probably just engine problems," Jake said, going back to his prep work. "We'll help them out and be on our way." But something felt wrong. Jake had grown, up in the rough parts of Earth's colony worlds. His instincts had kept him alive in places where humans weren't welcome. Right now, those instincts were telling him to pay attention. The ship began to slow down. Through the kitchen's large windows, Jake could see the cargo vessel in the distance. It looked dead in space, no lights, no signs of life. The ship was old and beat up, the kind that independent traders used to haul goods between the outer worlds. "That ship looks abandoned," Lisa said, joining Jake at the window. "Maybe," Jake replied, but his hand moved automatically to check his knife roll. Or maybe it's supposed to look that way. The Stellar Majesty moved closer to the cargo ship. Jake watched as the captain's shuttle bay opened to send out a rescue team. Standard procedure was to scan the ship first, then send over a small crew to check for survivors. Jake was cutting vegetables when the first explosion shook the ship. The lights flickered and several pans fell from their hooks on the wall. In the distance, Jake could see small, fast ships emerging from behind the cargo vessel. They had been hiding in the ship's sensor shadow, waiting. "Pirates," Jake said quietly. The second explosion was much closer. This time, the artificial gravity shifted for a moment, and Jake had to grab the prep table to keep from falling. Emergency alarms began to sound throughout the ship. All passengers report to designated safe areas immediately. Captain Zethkar's voice came over the speakers, but Jake could hear the tension in the captain's words. "This is not a drill. Security teams to battle stations." The kitchen filled with panic. Most of Jake's cooking staff were aliens who had never seen real violence. They ran around in circles, not sure what to do. Jake stood calmly in the center of the chaos and made his decision. "Everyone listen to me," he called out in a voice that cut through the noise. "Pete, take the staff to the emergency shelter on deck 12. Lisa, grab the first aid kit from my office. Move fast, but don't run." "What about you, Chef?" Lisa asked. "I'll be right behind you," Jake lied. The truth was that Jake had no intention of hiding in a shelter while pirates took over the ship. He had been in fights before, back when he was younger and angrier. He knew how to handle himself, and he wasn't about to let a bunch of raiders hurt innocent people. As his staff left the kitchen, Jake moved to his knife station. He selected his best blades and wrapped them in a towel. The 10-inch chef's knife, a 6-inch boning knife, and a small, paring blade for close work. Tools of his trade, but they could be much more if needed. Through the windows, Jake could see the pirate ships attaching themselves to the Stellar Majesty's hull. The raiders would be cutting through the ship's armor right now, preparing to board. Captain Zethkar's security forces were good, but they would be outnumbered and caught by surprise. Jake heard footsteps in the corridor outside the kitchen, heavy boots, moving fast, too fast to be passengers heading for shelter. He moved away from the windows and positioned himself behind the main prep station, where he could see both entrances to the kitchen. The door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. 3 figures in dark armor stepped through the smoke. They were Skarn, Jake realized. Reptilian raiders from the Outer Rim, known for their cruelty and their habit of selling prisoners as slaves. The first Skarn was huge, nearly 8 feet tall with green scales and yellow eyes. He carried a plasma rifle and wore the red markings of a war leader. The other 2 were smaller but just as dangerous looking. "Search everywhere," the leader hissed in broken galactic standard. "Find the soft ones. They bring good prices in the slave markets." Jake stayed hidden behind the prep station, watching and listening. The Skarn moved through the kitchen like they owned it, smashing equipment and looking for hiding places. They hadn't noticed him yet, but that wouldn't last long. One of the smaller Skarn approached Jake's hiding spot. The alien's back was turned as he searched through a storage cabinet. Jake moved silently, his grandmother's knife sliding from its sheath without a sound. The Skarn turned just as Jake reached him. The alien's eyes went wide with surprise, but he never had a chance to raise his weapon. Jake's blade found the gap between the neck scales and the armor, sliding in clean and quick. The Skarn dropped without making a sound. The other 2 Skarn were across the kitchen, still searching. Jake dragged the body behind the prep station and waited. Soon, one of them would come looking for their friend. Jake Martinez had come to space to cook food and see the galaxy. But sometimes, a man had to do what was necessary to protect innocent people. And Jake knew exactly how to use his knives for more than just cutting vegetables. Jake crawled through the food service tunnel, moving as quietly as possible. The narrow passage connected the main kitchen to the smaller prep areas throughout the ship. He had used these tunnels hundreds of times to move supplies, but never to hunt pirates. The tunnel opened into a storage room near the passenger dining hall. Jake listened carefully before emerging. He could hear Skarn voices in the main corridor, harsh and angry. They were organizing search teams to find him. Jake checked his supplies. He still had his 3 best knives and 2 power cells for the plasma rifle. More importantly, he had access to the ship's food distribution system. Every deck had automated food dispensers connected to the central kitchen by a network of tubes and conveyor belts. Jake knew that system like the back of his hand. He made his way to the central food processing station, staying in the service corridors. The room was empty, but the machinery was still running. The Skarn hadn't figured out how to shut down the ship's automated systems yet. Jake accessed the food distribution computer. The system showed him exactly where every dispenser was located, throughout the ship. More importantly, it showed him which areas had been taken by the pirates and which still had passengers or crew. The bridge was under pirate control. So were the main passenger decks and the docking bays. But there were still pockets of resistance on the lower levels. Security teams were trapped in several locations, fighting back but unable to coordinate with each other. Jake opened the ship's internal communication system. Captain Zethkar had given him access codes years ago so he could coordinate meal service with ship operations. Now he was going to use those codes for something very different. "This is Jake Martinez in food service," he broadcast on the emergency frequency. "I'm broadcasting from the central processing station. The kitchen area is clear of pirates, and I have access to the service tunnel system. Any surviving crew, please respond." The first answer came from Security Chief Rita Stone. Her voice was tight with stress. "Jake, this is Rita. We're pinned down on Deck 7, Section 12. How the hell are you still alive?" "Long story. How many pirates are we dealing with?" "At least 50, maybe more. They came out of that cargo ship like they owned the place. Captain Zethkar is either dead or captured. Most of my security teams are scattered." Jake felt a cold anger settle in his stomach. Captain Zethkar had been a good leader and a fair employer. If the pirates had killed him, they would pay for it. "Rita, I need you to listen carefully. I'm going to use the food service system to move around the ship. I can get to areas the pirates don't know about and hit them from behind. But I need you to coordinate with the other security teams. Jake, you're a cook, not a soldier. Get to a safe area and wait for rescue." "The pirates killed my kitchen staff," Jake lied smoothly. "I'm not running anywhere. Besides, I know this ship better than anyone except the maintenance crews. I can go places the Skarn can't even find." There was a pause. "What do you need?" "Information. Where are the largest groups of pirates? Where are they holding prisoners? And I need you to spread the word to any humans on the ship. We're going to fight back." Jake spent the next hour moving through the service tunnels, gathering intelligence and supplies. The food distribution system let him move anywhere on the ship without being seen. He located 3 major groups of pirates and identified their patrol patterns. The Skarn were overconfident. They controlled the main areas of the ship, but they hadn't bothered to secure the service areas. They didn't understand that a ship this size was like a small city, with hidden passages and maintenance, areas that even the crew didn't know about. Jake's first target was a patrol of 4 Skarn on Deck 9. They were guarding a group of captured passengers in one of the dining halls. Jake used the ventilation system to get above them, then dropped down behind the last pirate in line. His knife took the Skarn in the back of the neck, severing the spinal cord. The alien dropped without a sound. Jake dragged the body into an alcove and moved on to the next target. The second pirate was standing guard at a corridor junction. Jake came up behind him through a maintenance hatch, covering the alien's mouth with one hand while his knife found the heart with the other. 2 down, 2 to go. The third Skarn was more alert. He heard something and turned around just as Jake attacked. The alien managed to raise his weapon, but Jake was already inside his guard. The knife went up under the rib cage, angled toward the vital organs. The Skarn tried to scream, but only blood came out. The last pirate heard the struggle and came, running. Jake met him head-on, dodging the plasma bolt that burned past his shoulder. He tackled the Skarn, and they went down in a tangle of arms and weapons. Jake's knife found the alien's throat before the pirate could bring his rifle to bear. The rescued passengers were terrified, but alive. Jake used the food service communicator to contact Security Chief Stone and arranged for the survivors to be moved to a secure area. Then he disappeared back into the tunnel system before more pirates could arrive. Jake's second target was a Skarn weapons cache on Deck 12. The pirates had set up an armory in one of the conference rooms, storing extra rifles and ammunition. Jake approached through the catering access panel in the ceiling. The room was guarded by 2 pirates. Jake waited until they were both looking away, then dropped silently behind them. His knives made quick work of both guards. Jake took several plasma rifles and all the power cells he could carry, then rigged the remaining weapons to explode if anyone tried to move them. By now, word was spreading through the pirate ranks that something was hunting them in the corridors. Jake heard Vexthal's voice over the ship's communication system, ordering his warriors to move in larger groups and secure all the service areas. But the Skarn leader had made a mistake. He was trying to control too much territory with too few warriors. Every time he sent pirates to secure an area, Jake hit them somewhere else. The human was forcing the pirates to spread out, making them vulnerable to individual attacks. Jake's third target was personal. A group of Skarn had taken over the captain's quarters on the bridge deck. According to Rita Stone's intelligence, they were holding Captain Zethkar prisoner there. Getting to the bridge level meant crossing through heavily patrolled areas. But Jake had an advantage the pirates didn't know about. The food service system included a high-speed conveyor that carried prepared meals from the main kitchen to the executive dining room near the bridge. The conveyor tube was just big enough for a human to crawl through. Jake made the journey in complete darkness, following the conveyor belt as it wound through the ship's superstructure. The ride took 20 minutes and left him covered in food residue, but it got him to the bridge level without being detected. The executive dining room was empty. Jake could hear Skarn voices from the captain's quarters next door. He pressed his ear to the wall and listened. 3 pirates, maybe 4, and they were interrogating someone who could only be Captain Zethkar. Jake found the service entrance to the captain's quarters. It was designed for delivering meals to important passengers, barely large enough for a person to crawl through, but it opened directly into the captain's private kitchen, which connected to the main living area. Jake moved slowly, listening to the conversation in the next room. The pirates were trying to get security codes from the captain. Zethkar was refusing to cooperate despite the obvious pain in his voice. "Human cook," one of the Skarn was saying. "Tell us about human cook who kills our warriors." "I don't know what you're talking about," Captain Zethkar replied, his voice weak but defiant. "Human has killed 12 of our warriors, moves through ship like ghost, uses primitive blades. You will tell us how to find him." Jake smiled grimly. 12 pirates dead, and they still didn't understand what they were dealing with. The Skarn thought like predators, but they weren't apex predators. They had never faced anything like a human who had decided to hunt. Jake positioned himself at the kitchen entrance and counted the voices. 3 Skarn, plus Captain Zethkar. The captain was wounded but alive. That was all Jake needed to know. He moved into the main room like a shadow. The first Skarn died before he knew Jake was there, the knife sliding between his ribs and into his heart. The second pirate turned at the sound, but Jake was already moving, his blade opening the alien's throat in one smooth motion. The third Skarn managed to grab his weapon, but Captain Zethkar threw himself forward despite his injuries, tangling up the pirate's legs. Jake's knife found its target before the alien could recover. "Jake Martinez," Captain Zethkar said, looking up at his rescuer with amazement. "I should have known. When they told me a human was killing their warriors with cooking knives, I thought it might be you." Jake helped the captain to his feet. "Sorry I'm late, sir. Had to clear the kitchen first." Captain Zethkar laughed, despite his pain. "Jake, I think it's time we talked about giving you a raise." The second Skarn called out to his dead friend in their harsh language. When no answer came, he started walking toward Jake's hiding place behind the prep station. Jake waited, knife ready, counting the footsteps. The alien rounded the corner, with his weapon raised. Jake was already moving. He grabbed the Skarn's gun arm and twisted hard, hearing bones crack. His knife went up under the armor at the armpit, finding the vital organs underneath. The Skarn tried to scream, but only made a wet gurgling sound before collapsing. "Drex? Kolar?" the leader called out, suspicious now. His heavy boots moved across the kitchen floor as he searched for his missing warriors. Jake picked up one of the fallen plasma rifles and checked the charge. It was nearly full. He had never used alien weapons before, but the trigger was obvious enough. Still, he preferred his knives. They were quiet, reliable, and he knew exactly how much damage they could do. The Skarn leader appeared at the end of the prep station, weapon ready. But instead of finding his dead warriors, he found Jake Martinez standing calmly in the open, holding a plasma rifle. "Human," the Skarn hissed. "Where are my warriors?" "Dead," Jake said simply. "Like you're going to be if you don't leave my kitchen." The Skarn leader laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Soft human thinks he can fight Skarn warriors. You will make good slave for the markets." "I don't think so," Jake replied. The Skarn raised his weapon, but Jake was already diving behind a storage rack. The plasma bolt missed him by inches, melting a hole in the wall where his head had been. Jake rolled and came up firing. His first shot took the Skarn in the shoulder, spinning him around. The second shot hit center mass, and the alien leader crashed to the ground. Jake stood slowly, checking to make sure all 3 pirates were dead. The kitchen was a mess, but it was secure. For now. He heard voices in the corridor outside. More Skarn, talking in their language about the missing patrol. Jake counted at least 4 different voices, maybe more. Too many to fight head-on, even with the plasma rifle. Jake moved quickly to barricade the main entrance, pushing heavy equipment in front of the door. The service entrance was harder to block, but he managed to jam it with a broken prep table. It wouldn't stop the pirates, but it would slow them down and force them to come through one at a time. While he worked, Jake thought about the passengers who had been taking the kitchen tour when the attack started. They were hiding in the walk-in cooler, a dozen aliens from different species. Most of them were old or weak, not fighters. If the pirates found them, they would be taken as slaves or worse. Jake opened the cooler door and looked inside. The aliens, huddled together in fear, their eyes wide with terror. There were 2 elderly Centaurians, a family of dendrite traders with their young offspring, and several others he didn't recognize. "Is it safe?" asked one of the Centaurians in a shaky voice. "For now," Jake said. "But more pirates are coming. I need you all to stay quiet and stay hidden." "Can you do that?" They nodded quickly. Jake grabbed several large containers of cooking oil and some other supplies from the cooler, then sealed the door again. The aliens would be safe there as long as the pirates didn't think to look inside. The barricaded door began to shake as something heavy hit it from the other side. The pirates had found the kitchen and were trying to break in. Jake heard the whine of cutting tools as they worked on the metal barrier. Jake used the time to prepare. He knew this kitchen better than anyone. Every piece of equipment, every hiding spot, every way in and out. If the pirates wanted to take his territory, they were going to pay for it. He rigged the main gas line to the cooking station so he could turn it on remotely. A spark at the right time would turn the whole cooking area into an inferno. He positioned containers of boiling oil near the entrances where they could be easily knocked over. He even set up a makeshift crossbow using springs from the dishwashing, equipment and kitchen knives as ammunition. The cutting sounds stopped. Jake heard the pirates talking, planning their assault. He moved to a position where he could cover both entrances and waited. The service door exploded inward first. 2 Skarn rushed through, weapons ready. They ran straight into Jake's oil trap, slipping and sliding on the greasy floor. Jake's plasma rifle took out the first one before he could recover. The second managed to get off a shot that scorched the ceiling before Jake's knife found his throat. The main entrance burst open a moment later. 3 more pirates charged through, but they had to climb over the makeshift barricade. That made them perfect targets. Jake dropped 2 of them with the rifle before the third could take cover behind an overturned table. "Human is good fighter," the remaining Skarn called out in broken galactic standard. "But you are alone. We have many warriors. You cannot win." "Maybe," Jake replied from his hiding spot, "but I can make it expensive for you." More pirates were coming. Jake could hear them in the corridor, calling for reinforcements. Soon, there would be too many to fight. But he had learned something important during the last few minutes. The Skarn were tough and well-armed, but they weren't very smart. They fought like wild animals, all aggression and no tactics. Jake, on the other hand, had grown up in places where being smart was the difference between living and dying. He knew how to think, how to plan, how to use the terrain to his advantage. The kitchen was his territory, and he knew every inch of it. A new voice called out from the corridor. This one was different, more controlled and intelligent. Human. Warrior, I am Vexthul, war leader of the Crimson Razor Fleet. You fight well for a soft species. Surrender now, and I will give you quick death instead of slow pain. Jake laughed. Thanks for the offer, but I'll pass. Tell you what, though. If you leave my ship right now, I won't have to kill any more of your warriors. There was silence for a moment, then angry, hissing and snarling. Jake had insulted the pirate, leader in front of his warriors. That was good. Angry enemies made mistakes. You will learn the price of defying Skarn warriors, Vexthul growled. Take him alive. I want to hear him scream before he dies. Jake checked his ammunition. The plasma rifle was down to half charge, and he only had 2 spare power cells. His knives were clean and sharp, but knives meant getting close to enemies with superior numbers and firepower. The next wave came from both directions at once. Jake triggered his gas trap, filling the cooking area with combustible vapor. When the first Skarn stepped into the cloud with his plasma weapon, the resulting explosion knocked everyone to the ground. Jake rolled behind the blast shield of an industrial oven as debris rained down around him. The explosion had killed or wounded several pirates, but more were already climbing through the wreckage. One Skarn made it through the smoke and debris, his armor blackened, but his weapon still functional. Jake met him with just a knife, moving inside the alien's guard before he could bring his rifle to bear. The blade found the soft spot under the jaw, angled up into the brain. The Skarn dropped like a stone. Another pirate appeared through the smoke. Jake threw his paring knife with perfect accuracy, taking the alien in the eye. The Skarn stumbled backward, clutching his face, and fell into the wreckage. Enough! Vexthul roared. Bring the flame units! Burn him out! Jake realized his situation was getting worse. The pirates were learning, adapting their tactics. Soon, they would stop trying to take him alive and just kill him from a distance. He needed to change the game before that happened. Jake moved toward the service corridors that connected the kitchen to the rest of the food service area. He knew these passages better than anyone on the ship. If he could get into the ventilation system or the maintenance tunnels, he could move around the ship without being seen. But first, he had to make sure the aliens in the cooler stayed safe. Jake programmed the cooler's lock to only open to his voice print, then activated the emergency beacon inside. If something happened to him, the ship's rescue teams would eventually find the survivors. Jake Martinez had signed on to this ship to cook meals for paying passengers. But right now, he was the only thing standing between innocent people and a ship full of pirates. He picked up his knives and headed for the service tunnel. The war was just getting started. Captain Zethkar's injuries were serious, but not life-threatening. The Skarn had broken 2 of his arms and cracked several ribs, but the Valorian was tough. Jake helped him to the medical cabinet in the captain's quarters and administered basic first aid. How many pirates are left? Jake asked as he worked on the captain's wounds. At least 30, maybe more. Vexthul brought his entire raiding fleet. They're holding most of the passengers in the main assembly hall on Deck 5. The bastard is planning to sell them all as slaves. Jake's jaw tightened. The passenger manifest for this cruise included families, elderly beings, and civilians from dozens of peaceful species. The thought of them being sold in the Outer Rim slave markets made his blood boil. What about your security teams? Scattered and cut off from each other. Rita Stone is doing her best, but she's got maybe 20 security officers left active. The rest are dead or captured. Captain Zethkar winced as Jake bandaged his ribs. Jake, I need you to get to the emergency communication array. If we can send a distress signal, the Galactic Patrol might respond. Where's the array? Engineering section, Deck 15, but it's heavily guarded. Vexthul knows that's our only way to call for help. Jake thought for a moment. Captain, I need you to contact Rita and the other security teams. Tell them to prepare for a coordinated assault on the main assembly hall. Give me 2 hours to get into position. What are you planning? I'm going to give Vexthul something else to worry about besides guarding prisoners. Jake made his way back to the food service tunnels, but this time he wasn't traveling alone. He had convinced 2 other humans to join him. Pete Collins, the janitor, knew the ship's maintenance systems better than anyone. Lisa Park, the human engineer who had been hiding in the cargo bay, understood the ship's power grid and life support systems. This is crazy, Jake, Lisa whispered as they crawled through a ventilation shaft toward the engineering section. We're just civilians. We're not soldiers. Neither were the humans who fought off the Skarn raids on the colony worlds, Jake replied. Sometimes regular people have to do extraordinary things. Pete was carrying a bag of maintenance tools and cleaning chemicals. I still can't believe you killed 12 pirates with kitchen knives. 15 now, Jake corrected. And you're about to learn that humans are a lot more dangerous than most species realize. They reached the engineering section without being detected. Through a ventilation grate, they could see 6 Skarn guards positioned around the communication array. The pirates were alert and well-armed, but they were watching the main entrances. They weren't expecting an attack from inside the ventilation system. Jake's plan was simple but effective. Lisa would use her engineering knowledge to overload the main power coupling, creating a distraction. Pete would use his cleaning chemicals to create smoke and confusion. Jake would use the chaos to take out the guards with his knives. Remember, Jake whispered, humans have advantages these pirates don't understand. We can think faster, adapt quicker, and we fight as a team. Use those advantages. Lisa accessed the power coupling through a maintenance panel. Power overload in 3, 2, 1. The engineering section erupted in sparks and flashing lights as the main power coupling overloaded. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing the area in red light and filling the air with warning sirens. Pete's chemical smoke grenades went off a moment later, creating thick clouds of caustic vapor that burned the Skarn's sensitive respiratory systems. The pirates began coughing and stumbling around blind. Jake dropped from the ventilation shaft into the middle of the confusion. His first target was the guard captain, a large Skarn with ceremonial scars. Jake's knife found the gap in his armor before the alien could raise his weapon. The second pirate fired wildly into the smoke, his plasma bolts scorching the walls but hitting nothing. Jake moved like a shadow, his blade opening the alien's throat from behind. Lisa and Pete emerged from their hiding spots, using makeshift weapons and their knowledge of the ship's systems to fight back. Pete's industrial cleaning spray blinded one Skarn long enough for Lisa to hit him with a power coupling, electrocuting the pirate. The remaining 3 Skarn tried to regroup, but they were fighting an enemy they didn't understand. Jake moved through the smoke like a predator, using sound and movement to track his targets. His knives struck with surgical precision, finding weak points in armor and anatomy that the pirates didn't even know they had. Within 5 minutes, all 6 guards were dead. Jake activated the emergency communication array and sent out a priority distress signal to the Galactic Patrol. The response came immediately. This is Patrol Ship Defender responding to distress call from Stellar Majesty. What is your situation? This is Jake Martinez aboard the Stellar Majesty. We are under attack by Skarn pirates. Passengers are being held hostage. Request immediate assistance. Jake Martinez. This is Captain Susan Wright of the Defender. We are 3 hours away at maximum speed. Can you maintain your position until we arrive? We'll be here, Captain. But these pirates won't be. Jake switched to the ship's internal communication system. Captain Zethkar, this is Jake. The distress signal is sent. Galactic Patrol is 3 hours out. Time to take our ship back. Roger that, Jake. All security teams, this is Captain Zethkar. Prepare for Operation Cleanup. We're going to show these pirates what happens when they attack a ship with humans aboard. Jake led his team through the service tunnels toward the main assembly hall. Along the way, they picked up more survivors. Carlos Rivera, a human security guard who had been presumed dead. Danny Kim, a maintenance worker who had been hiding in the waste processing system. Sarah Miller, a passenger services coordinator who had armed herself with emergency tools. By the time they reached the assembly hall, Jake had a team of 8 humans, all of them angry and determined to fight back. They weren't soldiers, but they were something the Skarn had never encountered before, humans with nothing to lose and everything to fight for. The assembly hall was a large space in the center of the ship, normally used for entertainment and dining. Now it held over 200 passengers under guard by at least 20 Skarn pirates. Vexthul himself was there, easily identified by his elaborate armor and the scars that marked him as a war leader. Jake studied the situation through a service hatch. The pirates were positioned around the room, but they were focused on watching the prisoners, not guarding against external attack. They had made the same mistake as the guards in engineering. They were thinking like raiders, not defenders. Lisa, can you access the hall's environmental controls from here? Yeah, but what do you want me to do? Turn off the artificial gravity in that room, just for 30 seconds. Lisa's eyes widened as she understood. That's brilliant. The Skarn are used to high-gravity worlds. They'll be helpless in 0G. Pete, I need you to access the fire suppression system. Can you fill that room with flame-retardant foam? Easy. But won't that hurt the passengers too? The foam won't hurt them, but it will blind the pirates and make their weapons less effective. Jake checked his knives one more time. When the gravity goes off and the foam starts, everyone moves. We hit them fast and hard before they can recover. Jake positioned his team at different entry points around the assembly hall. When everyone was ready, he gave the signal. The artificial gravity cut off suddenly, sending everyone in the room floating toward the ceiling. The Skarn, used to heavy gravity, couldn't control their movement in 0G. They spun helplessly through the air, unable to aim their weapons or coordinate their defense. The flame-retardant foam began spraying from the ceiling nozzles, filling the room with thick white clouds that stuck to everything and everyone. The pirates couldn't see, couldn't breathe properly, and couldn't move in the weightless environment. Jake and his team struck like lightning. They moved through the foam using sound and touch to find their targets. Jake's knives found Skarn throats and hearts with deadly accuracy. The other humans used whatever weapons they could find. Maintenance, tools, emergency equipment, even pieces of broken furniture. The passengers, mostly from low-gravity worlds, adapted to the weightless environment much better than the pirates. Some of them even helped, grabbing floating weapons and using them against their former captors. When the gravity came back on, 30 seconds later, most of the Skarn were already dead or dying. The few survivors found themselves facing an angry crowd of passengers and a team of humans who had just proven that they were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Vexthul himself was still alive, though he had lost his weapon in the chaos. The pirate leader floated near the ceiling, foam dripping from his armor, staring down at Jake with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You," he snarled. "Human cook, you have cost me my entire raiding party." Jake looked up at the pirate leader with cold eyes. "You shouldn't have come to my ship." Vexthul dropped to the floor as the gravity stabilized, landing in a crouch. Despite everything, he was still a dangerous opponent. His claws extended from his gauntlets, and his armor had built-in energy shields. "I will kill you slowly, human. I will make you pay for what you have done to my warriors." Jake wiped the foam from his knife and smiled. "You're welcome to try." The alarm bells rang through the Zephyrian ship Stellar Fang. Captain Veltar looked at the main screen with his large yellow eyes. His blue skin showed the worry lines that came with years of military service. "What do we have, Commander?" Veltar asked his second officer. Commander Thessera checked her readings. "Sir, we found a human ship floating dead in space. It looks damaged. No power readings, no life support signals. Veltar walked closer to the screen. The human ship was small and looked like a cargo transport. Parts of its hull were burned black. Long scratches ran down its sides like claw marks. Any signs of life? Veltar asked. Weak biosigns, sir. One human life form. The signal is very faint. Veltar thought for a moment. The war between humans and Zephyrians had been going on for 3 years. But his people had rules about helping. Those in need. Even enemy civilians deserved basic care. Bring us alongside. Prepare a boarding team. 20 minutes later, Veltar led 5 soldiers onto the human ship. The air inside was cold and stale. Emergency lights gave off a red glow that made everything look like blood. Their boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. They found the human in a small cell at the back of the ship. He was sitting on a hard bench, wearing torn clothes. His brown hair was messy and his face was dirty. When he saw the Zephyrians, his eyes went wide with fear. "Please don't hurt me," the human said in broken Zephyrian. "I'm just a cargo pilot." Veltar held up his hand. "We will not harm you. What is your name?" "Jake Morrison," the human said. His voice shook. "I was hauling supplies between colonies when pirates attacked my ship. They put me in this cage and left me here when their ship got damaged." Veltar looked around the cell. It was small and dirty. A bowl of old food sat in one corner. The human looked thin and weak. "How long have you been here?" Veltar asked. 5 days? Maybe 6. I lost count." Jake rubbed his arms like he was cold. "I thought I was going to die here." One of Veltar's soldiers, a young officer named Crixtall, stepped forward. "Captain, we should be careful. This could be a trap." Veltar looked at the weak human again. Jake was trying to stand, but his legs shook. This did not look like a dangerous enemy soldier. "Get him medical attention," Veltar ordered. "And food. Real food." "Thank you," Jake said. Tears came to his eyes. "Thank you so much." 2 hours later, Jake sat in a clean room on the Stellar Fang. The ship's doctor, a gentle Zephyrian named Hesimo, had checked him over and given him medicine. Jake now wore clean clothes and had eaten his first good meal in days. Captain Veltar came to visit him. Jake stood up quickly, almost too quickly for someone who was supposed to be weak. "Please sit," Veltar said. "You need rest." "I can't think." "You enough?" Jake said. "Your people saved my life." "Any decent being would do the same," Veltar replied. "Tell me about these pirates. Were they human?" Jake nodded. "Yes, sir. They called themselves the Red Star Gang. They've been hitting cargo ships all along the border zones." This was news to Veltar. "Red Star Gang? We have not heard of them." "They're new," Jake said. "Started about 2 months ago. They take the cargo and sell it on black markets. They don't usually kill crews, just leave them somewhere remote." Veltar made notes on his data pad. This information could be useful. "What kind of cargo were you carrying?" "Medical supplies," Jake said quickly. "Basic medicines for the outer colonies. Nothing military." "And where were you going?" "New Denver colony. It's about 40 light years from here." Veltar knew of New Denver. It was a small farming colony with no military value. This human story seemed real. Over the next few hours, Jake met more of the crew. They brought him food and asked about human culture. Jake seemed happy to talk. He told them about his home on Earth, about flying cargo ships, about his family. "I have a sister named Kate," Jake said to Commander Thessera. "She teaches school on Mars. Always. Tells me to find a safer job." Thessera smiled. "Family always worries. My mother still thinks I should have been a farmer like my father." Jake laughed. "Mothers are the same everywhere, I guess." But while Jake talked and smiled, his eyes were always moving. He looked at the walls, the ceiling, the control panels. He watched how the crew moved and worked. He listened to every word they said. When they brought him to the medical bay, Jake saw the ship's main computer systems. When they walked him to his quarters, He counted the guard stations and weapon points. When they fed him in the mess hall, he heard officers talking about ship business. None of the Zephyrians noticed. To them, Jake was just a grateful civilian looking around with normal curiosity. That night, alone in his quarters, Jake made tiny marks on the wall near his bed. To anyone else, they would look like scratches from moving furniture. But they were, actually, a map of the ship's layout. Jake looked out the small window at the stars. Somewhere out there, his real ship was following. The UES Thunderstrike was the most advanced stealth ship in the human fleet. Right now, it was invisible to Zephyrian sensors, staying just close enough to track the stellar fang. Jake touched a small spot on his shirt collar. Hidden inside was a tiny transmitter, so small that no medical scanner would find it. Through this device, he could send simple coded messages to his real crew. He tapped the spot 3 times, then once, then twice. The message was simple. Mission proceeding. Target acquired. 40 miles away, Commander Lisa Grant received the signal on the Thunderstrike's bridge. She smiled. Jake was the best infiltration specialist in the fleet. If anyone could pull off this crazy plan, it was him. The plan was dangerous but necessary. Human intelligence had learned that the Zephyrians were planning a massive attack on civilian colonies, but they didn't know when or where. The only way to find out was to get someone inside their command structure, so Jake had volunteered to pose as a rescued prisoner, the fake pirate attack, the damaged cargo ship, even his torn clothes. Everything was planned to make the Zephyrians want to help him. Now Jake was inside their ship, gathering intelligence. Every piece of information he learned could save thousands of human lives, but the mission was just beginning. Jake needed to get to their main naval base, where the real planning was happening, and he needed to do it without anyone suspecting who he really was. As Jake lay on his bunk, he thought about the Zephyrian crew. They seemed like good people. Captain Veltar was honorable. Commander Thessera was kind. Even the suspicious young officer Crixtal was just doing his job. It made what Jake had to do harder. These aliens were treating him well, showing him kindness. And he was lying to them about everything, but the mission came first. Too many innocent lives depended on it. Jake closed his eyes and began planning his next moves. Tomorrow, he would continue being the grateful rescued pilot. He would ask innocent questions and make helpful observations. He would slowly gather the intelligence that could stop a war. The Zephyrians thought they had saved a helpless human prisoner. They had no idea they had brought the enemy's top spy right into their hearts.